The night my daughter-in-law grabbed my phone at dinner and saw the number on the screen, the air in that Chicago restaurant froze. $33 million. A figure so huge it split the table in two and turned every face toward me. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. I had planned that dinner for Olivia. She had just received a scholarship offer from a state university, and I thought a quiet celebration near the lake would be a way to honor her hard work. The restaurant was glass-walled, candles reflecting on the dark surface of Lake Michigan. I ordered soup, steaks, and a chocolate cake. Nothing extravagant, but enough to make her smile. I should have known better. Linda, my son Andrew's wife, leaned across the table when my phone buzzed. She said she only wanted to silence the ringer so the moment stayed perfect. But she tilted the screen, and there it was. A portfolio update from my brokerage app, clear and cruel in its precision. 33 million. For a moment, no one spoke. Knives hovered above plates, wine glasses stopped midway. My own breath stalled. Then Andrew's fork clattered on the porcelain. Jacob, my younger brother, blinked as if he had just seen a ghost. Olivia's face went pale, not from greed but from the shock that her grandmother had been carrying a secret heavier than gold. I did not reach for the phone. I simply folded my napkin, placed it on my lap, and looked each of them in the eye. Yes, it was mine. The silence cracked. Andrew pushed his chair back. His voice was low but sharp. "Mum, this cannot be right. You worked night shifts as a nurse. You saved pennies. Where would you ever get that kind of money?" I lifted my glass of water, held it steady in my hand. I told him I learned long ago how to make small amounts grow. I did not say more. The less detail, the more power I kept. Linda was not satisfied. Her lips curved into something between a grin and a sneer. "That number is family money," she said. "Family always shares." I felt the words strike the center of my chest. Family money. That phrase had a weight to it, as if they believed my life's work, my sleepless nights in crowded emergency rooms, belonged to them simply because we shared blood or last names. I kept quiet. In moments like these, silence is louder than shouting. Jacob cleared his throat. His tone was the old patriarchal one he used at reunions when he wanted control. "We should talk about this openly," he said. "No secrets. This fortune affects all of us." I stared at him. The man had not called me once when my husband died. He had not visited when my arthritis swelled my fingers. Yet here he was, reaching across my table for something he never built. The waiter arrived with our entrees, but no one lifted a fork. The steak cooled in front of me. Olivia shifted uncomfortably, twisting her napkin into knots. I wanted to protect her, shield her from the ugly change crawling across her parents' and uncle's faces, but the truth was already loose in the air. Linda leaned closer. Her voice was syrupy sweet but hard underneath. "You are 70 now, Vivian. How much of that can you even use? Be reasonable. Keep a little. Let us handle the rest." I placed my glass down carefully. My reflection shimmered in the water, and I thought of all those nights I had checked patient charts by fluorescent light, the beeping machines counting out fragile lives. I remembered stitching wounds at 3 a.m, rolling bodies to prevent bed sores, whispering comfort into ears that might never wake again. I thought of the overtime hours, the sacrifices, the nights Martha, my old colleague, drove me home because I was too exhausted to see straight. None of them had been there. And now they wanted to calculate what I deserved to keep. I looked up, let my voice settle into calm stone. No one at this table earned that number, but me. The words landed with finality. Forks trembled. Jacob's jaw tightened. Linda's hand clenched the stem of her glass. The chocolate cake arrived, candles lit for Olivia. The waiter asked softly if we wanted to sing. No one opened their mouth. The flame flickered between us, thin and wavering, as if it knew it was standing in a storm. I leaned toward Olivia, whispered so only she could hear. "This night was supposed to be about you. I am sorry it turned into something else." She nodded, eyes damp, but said nothing. When the plates were cleared, I stood, placed a bill on the tray, and picked up my phone from the table. I could feel the heat of their stares burning into my back. The city lights glittered beyond the window as I walked out. Behind me, chairs scraped, voices rose in whispers. The storm had only begun, but I already knew I would not surrender. After that dinner, I could not sleep. The number on the screen, the looks on their faces, the silence that cut sharper than words. It replayed in my mind as if the whole evening had been recorded and set on a loop. I poured myself a cup of tea and sat by the window of my small house in Evanston. The lake breeze drifted in, cool against my tired skin. I let my eyes close, and in an instant I was back where it had all begun, long before anyone cared about my bank balance. I was 22 when I started my first night shift as a nurse. The corridors of St. Luke's Hospital smelled of disinfectant and worry. I remember my hands trembling as I tied the apron around my waist, trying to hide my fear behind a mask of professionalism. The senior nurse pressed a chart into my hands and said, "Room 312, new admission. Take vitals every hour." That was it. No instructions about how to survive 12 hours without sitting down, how to carry the weight of other people's pain, how to ignore the hunger gnawing at my stomach. Night after night, I learned. I learned to count heartbeats in the dark. I learned to lift patients twice my size. I learned to whisper prayers I never said out loud, because sometimes prayer was all I could offer. While my family slept in warm beds, I walked the silent halls and kept strangers alive. The pay was small. I used to fold my check into an envelope and lock it in the bottom drawer. From each one, I saved a little, $5 here, $10 there. I packed cold sandwiches and walked to work so I would not spend on bus fare. My colleagues teased me for eating beans and rice so often. They bought new shoes, new coats, vacations to Florida. I bought nothing but more hours in the future. I remember one winter when Olivia was still a baby. Andrew called asking for help with rent. I wired him part of my paycheck and told him not to worry. That month I ate oatmeal for breakfast and dinner. No one thanked me. They assumed it was natural for me to sacrifice. Some nights were unbearable. The beeping of monitors, the cries of families, the cold weight of failure when a patient slipped away despite every effort. I would sit on a plastic chair in the break room, hands stiff from scrubbing, eyes red from exhaustion. Martha, my closest colleague, would hand me a paper cup of coffee and say, "You'll get through it, Viv." And I always did. I studied in secret. After shifts, I went home and read books about investing. It made no sense to anyone around me. A nurse with textbooks on the stock market? They laughed. But I kept reading, page after page, until the words began to make sense. When the market dipped, I bought what little I could. When others rushed to sell, I held. Slowly the numbers grew. There were years when I barely noticed. I was too busy working, raising Andrew, keeping the house together after my husband passed. The money was background noise, a quiet hum I rarely turned to, but it was there, climbing higher each season, proof that discipline could build something solid even from scraps. The family never saw that side of me. To them I was just Mum, just Aunt Vivian, the nurse who always said yes, the one who showed up early to cook at reunions, the one who stayed late to clean when everyone else had gone home. They never asked what I did with my own life. They assumed I had none. Now I sat by the window, watching the faint lights of the city across the water, and felt a strange calm settle over me. The years of sacrifice had not been wasted. They were written into every dollar, every line of that account. But what struck me most was not pride. It was the realization that the people who had benefited most from my quiet strength were the same ones now circling like vultures. I touched the glass, cold against my palm, and whispered to myself, I built this. For a long time I sat in silence. The house was empty, only the ticking of the clock and the hum of the refrigerator for company. I thought of all the times I had wished for family closeness, for warm laughter around my table, for respect that never came. And I saw clearly now that money had only revealed what was always true. They never valued me. They valued what I could give. As the clock struck 3, I closed my eyes and made a decision. I would no longer measure myself by their needs. I had survived nights filled with blood, loss, and exhaustion. I could survive their disappointment too. When I finally went to bed, I felt the weight of the years pressing on my chest. But beneath it all, there was also a flicker of strength. They thought the number on the screen defined me. They had no idea it was only the surface of what I had endured. And for the first time in many years, I allowed myself to believe that I was more than what they thought. The morning after the dinner, the phone began to ring before the sun had risen. At first, I let it go. I sipped my coffee and watched the steam curl in the cold air. By the 5th call, I picked up. It was Andrew. His voice carried a new weight, not the tone of a son speaking to his mother, but of a man demanding something owed. Mum, we need to talk about last night. I said nothing. He continued, pressing harder. You cannot keep this secret from the family. Everyone deserves clarity. 33 million is not something one person hides. I told him I did not owe anyone an explanation. He paused, then sighed heavily. You are being stubborn. Linda is right. This money has to be managed. You are 70. You cannot handle this kind of responsibility alone. I ended the call without another word. By noon, Jacob arrived at my house. He did not knock politely. His hand pounded against the doorframe until I opened it. He stood there in his heavy coat, breath clouding in the winter air, eyes sharp with accusation. Vivian, this is not just your business. We are blood. Blood means the fortune belongs to all of us. You cannot deny that. I stepped aside but did not invite him in. He walked into my kitchen as if it were his own, pulling out a chair and sitting down. I remained standing. I gave my life to this family, I said. I worked while you slept. I saved while you wasted. This is mine. Jacob slapped his hand against the table. Do not twist history. You only had opportunities because we supported you. Think of Andrew. Think of Olivia. They deserve a share. Without you, they will struggle. I almost laughed at the word deserve. He had not lifted a finger for me since our parents died, yet now he spoke as if entitlement was a birthright. While Jacob lectured me, Linda called again. Her voice came through the machine before I could stop it. Vivian, we need to be practical. The money cannot sit idle. You need to put it into hands that know what to do. 5 million would be more than enough for you. The rest we can divide. Think of it as securing the future of the family. Jacob leaned back, nodding at the message, as if it proved his point. I looked at him and spoke slowly so there would be no misunderstanding. I am not handing over what I built. Not now. Not ever. His expression shifted, the mask of concern slipping to reveal something darker. If you do not listen, we will find another way. People will say you are not well. People will believe it. Do you want to be remembered as the old woman who lost her mind over money? He left with that warning echoing in the air. The house felt heavy after he was gone. I sat in my chair and stared at the wall. For years I had accepted slights and insults in silence. But now the silence was filled with threats. That evening Andrew came by. He did not come alone. Linda followed, her smile stretched too thin. Olivia trailed behind, her face tight with confusion. "Mum," Andrew began, "this is tearing the family apart. We just need to come to an agreement, a plan that works for everyone." Linda placed a folder on the table. "We drafted an outline. Nothing complicated. You keep a small portion. We manage the rest. We will make sure your name is honored." I did not open the folder. Instead, I looked at Olivia. She was biting her lip, eyes darting between us. "Grandma, they say you do not want to help us," she whispered. "Is that true?" My chest ached at her words. I reached out and took her hand. "I love you, Olivia. Never doubt that. But love is not measured in money." Andrew pulled her hand back gently. "See, Mum, this is what I mean. You are making her question things. You are letting stubborn pride ruin us." I rose from the table. "No, I am letting your greed reveal you." The room fell quiet. Linda's eyes hardened. Andrew's jaw clenched. Olivia looked as if she might cry. They left soon after, but the damage lingered. I sat in the stillness, feeling the weight of their words pressing down like a storm gathering on the horizon. In the days that followed, the calls did not stop. Jacob insisted on meetings. Linda left long voicemails about reason and responsibility. Andrew begged, then accused, then begged again. Each message carried the same refrain: share, divide, relinquish. But I held firm. What they could not see was that the money was never the point. It was the years of sacrifice written into every dollar, the nights of sweat and fear, the discipline to save when there was nothing left to save, the refusal to give up when everything seemed broken. They wanted numbers. I held a lifetime. The circle had tightened, and I knew it would keep closing until it tried to crush me. But in that pressure, I also felt something new, a spark of defiance I had not allowed myself in years. If they wanted a fight, I would give them one. 2 days after Andrew and Linda showed up with their folder, I agreed to attend another family meeting. They insisted it would be different this time. They said there would be calm discussion, no raised voices. Against my better judgment, I went, not because I believed them, but because I wanted to see just how far they would push. We gathered in Andrew's dining room. The table was set with coffee cups and a plate of pastries, though no one touched them. The curtains were drawn, even though it was mid-afternoon. The room felt like a stage built for confrontation. Linda started first. Her tone was sweet, but sharp underneath. "Vivian, we love you. That is why we are worried. Handling 33 million is too much for one person. We have talked with some advisors. They say it would be best if you created a trust for the family. You would still have what you need, but the rest could be directed responsibly." I folded my hands and looked at her. "A trust for the family? You mean a vault for your desires?" Andrew shifted uncomfortably. "It is not about us. It is about security. You cannot live alone with this burden. One fall, one mistake, and everything could vanish. We are only trying to protect you." Jacob leaned forward, his elbows pressing into the table. "Think of legacy, Vivian. Think of how people will remember you. Do you want to be the old woman who hoarded wealth, or the matriarch who lifted her bloodline?" I reached into my bag. Slowly, I pulled out an apron, the same one I had kept since my years at the hospital. It was stained, the fabric worn thin, the ties frayed. I placed it on the table. The sound of it dropping on the wood was louder than any argument. "Do you know what this is?" I asked quietly. Linda frowned. "An apron. What does that have to do with anything?" "This is 30 years of my life," I said. 30 years of night shifts, of bending over beds, of cleaning blood and sweat. Every dollar you are circling came from hours spent in this apron. None of you were there. None of you carried the weight." The room went silent. For a moment, even Jacob looked away. I continued. "When you say I cannot handle responsibility, you erase everything I have proven already. I kept patients alive through blackouts and shortages. I raised a son alone. I balanced work, grief, and survival. Do not tell me I cannot manage what I built." Andrew's face reddened. "Mom, this is not about denying your work. We respect you. But this is bigger than you now. You need to be practical." I pushed the apron closer to him. Respect would mean leaving me in peace. Practicality would mean trusting the person who earned it, not scheming to take it. Linda exhaled loudly. "You are being dramatic. No one is scheming. We are offering solutions." "Solutions that end with me handing everything to you," I replied. Jacob's voice rose. "You are blind if you cannot see reason. If you refuse to cooperate, we will have to pursue legal action. People already wonder if you are sound of mind. Do not force us to prove otherwise." I looked at him, steady and cold. "Then prove it, but you will not find what you are looking for." The words hung between us. Olivia sat quietly in the corner, her hands folded in her lap. She looked at me with wide eyes, caught between loyalty to her parents and the truth she could not unsee. I stood, picking up the apron. I tied it loosely around my waist. The action was slow, deliberate, a reminder. When I wore this every night, no one came to relieve me. No one offered solutions then. I bore it alone. And I will bear this alone now. I untied it again, folded it, and slid it back into my bag. "This meeting is over." Linda slammed her hand against the table. "Vivian, do not walk away from this. We are not finished." I turned toward the door. "I am finished. You can keep talking to your pastries if you want," Andrew called after me, his voice breaking. "You cannot just shut us out. We are your family." I paused at the doorway, my back still to them. Family does not demand what it never gave. Remember that. I left without another word. Outside, the air was crisp, the sky pale with winter light. My heart pounded, but my steps were steady. The further I walked from that house, the lighter I felt. That night, I placed the apron on my kitchen chair. I stared at it for a long time. It was more than cloth. It was a witness. It had absorbed years of labor, grief, and quiet victories. It reminded me that I did not need their permission to hold what was mine. The calls started again within the hour. Andrew left messages, pleading and scolding by turns. Linda spoke of obligations. Jacob warned of consequences. But I ignored them. I knew the circle was closing tighter each day, but something inside me had shifted. I was no longer simply defending money. I was defending the dignity that apron represented, and I promised myself I would not let them strip it from me. The days after that meeting stretched into a kind of grey haze. The phone rang so often that I unplugged it at night. When it did not ring, the silence carried its own heavy pressure. I tried to read, tried to cook simple meals, tried to sit by the lake as I had always done, but nothing felt the same. It was not the number in my account that kept me awake. It was the memory of their eyes when they looked at me. Greed stripped away everything I thought still connected us. I had always known I was taken for granted, but I had clung to the small comfort that they still cared for me in their own way. That illusion shattered. I remembered the hospital stay 3 years earlier, when my heart had given me trouble. I had been admitted overnight for observation. The room smelled of bleach, the machines hummed steadily, and the hours crawled by. I waited for the door to open, for Andrew to come, for Jacob to bring a flower or a smile. No one came. Martha sat by my bed, holding my hand through the long hours. She told me stories to keep my mind off the monitors. My own blood stayed silent. That memory pressed harder now because it was so clear. When I was weak and needed love, there was none. Now that I had money, they could not leave me alone. Another memory rose up. The year Andrew lost his job. He had come to my house, his voice trembling, his pride broken. I lent him money without hesitation. He promised to pay it back, and for a while he did, but then the payments stopped. When I reminded him, he smiled thinly and said, "It is family money, Mom. Do not worry." I did not argue then. I let it go. But I never forgot. There were other times too. Olivia's 12th birthday, when I spent all day baking her cake, decorating the house, cleaning every corner. Linda had shown up at the last moment with her hair freshly done and accepted the compliments as if she had prepared everything. No one thanked me. When the party ended, I washed the dishes alone, while the others laughed in the living room. I carried these moments for years without speaking. They were small cuts, but the cuts never closed. Now they burned like open wounds. One evening I sat in the dark and listened to the clock ticking. It was almost midnight, and I realized I had not spoken a word to anyone all day. The silence in the house echoed back at me, heavy and sharp. It felt like proof of how invisible I had been to them for so long. The phone blinked with a new message. I pressed play and heard Linda's voice. "Vivian, this has gone too far. You are isolating yourself. People are starting to ask questions. If you keep acting like this, the authorities may have to step in. Think about how embarrassing that would be. Think about how the community would see you." I turned the machine off. I sat with her words for a long time. Embarrassing, she had said. Embarrassing to whom? To them. Because if I refused to give in, their image of control would collapse. Another message arrived the next morning, this time from Jacob. His tone was harsher. "You are being selfish. You had your life. It is time to pass it on. If you cannot see that, we will take measures to make sure you do not destroy what belongs to us." The anger in his voice might have scared me once, but now it only confirmed what I already knew. They had never seen me as anything more than a provider, a woman to cook, to lend, to give. That afternoon, Olivia came by after school. She stood at the door, shy and uncertain. I let her in, and she sat at the table, twisting her fingers together. "Grandma," she said softly, "Mum says you do not love us anymore. She says you care more about money than about family." The words cut deeper than Jacob's threats or Linda's pressure. They had used her as a weapon. My granddaughter, barely 16, caught in a war she did not ask for. I reached across the table and took her hand. "Olivia, I have loved you since the day you were born. Nothing will ever change that. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise." She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Then why is everyone so angry?" "Because money shows the truth," I said. "It shows what people value most. Sometimes that truth hurts." She nodded slowly, though I could see she did not fully understand. She hugged me tightly before she left. I watched her walk down the street, her small frame swallowed by the fading light. When the door closed behind her, I let the tears fall. Not for the money, not even for the betrayal, but for the years we had wasted, hoping they would see me, respect me, love me without conditions. That night I placed the apron on the chair again. I looked at it and whispered, "They only saw the stains, never the strength." The weight of silence pressed down again, but this time it carried a spark. I felt a shift deep inside, a realization that I could not keep living with my pain locked away. They wanted me broken, guilty, dependent. But all those nights at the hospital had taught me how to survive storms. As the clock struck 2, I made myself a promise. I would not let their voices be the only story told about me. If they wanted to turn my sacrifices into shame, I would find a way to turn them into proof. Proof that my life meant more than the demands they threw at me. The morning after Olivia's visit, I woke up with a heaviness I could not shake. I moved through the house slowly, making coffee, washing the same plate twice, staring out the window at the bare trees. The silence that once gave me comfort now felt like a weight pressing against my chest. I realized I could not sit in that house another day while the phone blinked with threats and guilt. By late afternoon, I packed a small bag. I placed the old apron inside, folded carefully as if it were a shield. Then I walked out and locked the door behind me. My steps carried me down familiar streets until I reached a small blue house with a white porch. Martha opened the door before I even knocked. She looked at me and did not ask questions. She simply stepped aside and said, "Come in." Her kitchen smelled of chicken soup simmering on the stove. The warmth hit me like a blanket. I sat at the table and she set a bowl in front of me. The first spoonful brought tears to my eyes. It was not the taste, though it was good. It was the reminder that someone cared enough to feed me without expecting anything in return. After a while, Martha sat down across from me. "Heard what happened," she said. "Andrew called my daughter. News travels faster than we want it to." I kept my gaze on the table. They will not stop. Every call, every visit, it is the same words. Family money, share, divide. They think I am too old to know what I am doing. Martha reached for my hand. "You are not too old. You are tired. There is a difference. And you are not alone. You have me." Her words settled over me gently, but I could feel the storm building outside that kitchen. "They are already talking about taking legal steps," I admitted. "Jacob threatened it. Linda leaves messages hinting that I am losing my mind. They will twist everything I do." Martha's eyes narrowed. "Then you need to make your own plan before they make one for you." I looked at her, surprised at the steel in her voice. She was always the gentle one at the hospital, the one who sang quietly while we worked. But now I saw a firmness there that steadied me. We sat for hours, sipping soup, talking about what lay ahead. I told her about the weight of the years, about the loneliness that had filled my house, about Olivia's confused eyes. Martha listened without interrupting, nodding slowly, letting me pour out everything I had held inside. When the clock struck 9, she stood and went to a drawer. She returned with a stack of postcards bound by a rubber band. She placed them in front of me. "Do you remember these?" she asked. I untied the band and read them. Old notes from former patients, families who had written thank you cards years ago. One said, "To Nurse Vivian, who held my hand when no one else would." Another read, "You gave my father comfort in his last hours. We will never forget." I felt my throat tighten. I had forgotten these voices. They had been tucked away while I drowned in silence. Now they rose again, reminding me that my life meant more than the names calling me selfish. Martha poured me tea. "You spent your years saving lives. Now save your own." Her words struck deep. I realized then that I could not keep waiting for them to stop. They would not. If I stayed in that house, I would be cornered until I broke. But if I stepped forward, if I used the strength I had earned in those long nights, I could change the story. I whispered, "I will not fight them in the shadows. I will fight them in daylight." Martha nodded. "Then you need to decide what daylight looks like." I slept in her guest room that night. The sheets smelled of lavender, the mattress firmer than I was used to. I lay awake for a while, listening to the quiet creaks of the house. For the first time in weeks, I did not feel completely alone. As I drifted toward sleep, I thought of the apron folded in my bag, the postcards on the table, the soup still warming on the stove. These were my reminders. I was not just an old woman with money. I was a nurse who had endured storms, a mother who had survived loss, a woman who had built something from almost nothing. When morning came, the sun poured through the curtains. I rose with a strange energy, a steadiness I had not felt in years. Martha handed me a cup of coffee and said, "You are ready now." I smiled faintly, not ready for war, ready for truth. And with that, the path ahead began to take shape. The morning after I left my house behind, I walked with Martha to the clinic by the lake. The building was small, painted in pale blue, with a steady line of people waiting outside. The wind from Lake Michigan cut through our coats, but the line did not move. They waited patiently, because inside was one of the few places that still gave care without demanding too much in return. As I stepped through the doors, a wave of memory washed over me. The smell of antiseptic, the low hum of voices, the shuffle of tired feet. It was not St. Luke's, but the rhythm was the same. Nurses moved quickly, their hands steady even when their eyes showed exhaustion. Volunteers stacked boxes of supplies. Children clung to their mothers. Old men sat quietly in folding chairs. One of the doctors looked up and smiled. "Nurse V," he said softly, almost like a secret greeting. I nodded. It had been years since I first started sending quiet donations to this place, always signing them with that name. I never wanted recognition. I only wanted to know the lights would stay on for the people who needed them most. Martha touched my arm. "Show them who you are," she whispered. The doctor led us into a small office where files were stacked to the ceiling. "You have been with us longer than most of our staff," he said. "Your help kept us alive through rough years. Now you are here in person. That means something." I looked at the photos pinned to the wall. Children smiling with bandaged arms. Volunteers in white shirts holding trays of food. Families sitting together on plastic chairs, faces tired but grateful. It struck me that here, in this modest clinic, my name carried weight without anyone knowing my story. Later that afternoon, I walked along the lake alone. The water rolled dark and restless. I thought about the storm building inside my family's house and felt another storm rising here. But this one was different. It was not fueled by greed. It was fueled by survival, by the endless need for care, by the quiet strength of people who had so little, yet still stood in line with dignity. I sat on a bench and pulled out my phone. For a long moment, I stared at the blank message screen, my thumb hovering over the keys. Then I typed Olivia's name. "Can you keep a secret until Saturday?" I hesitated before sending it. She was young, caught between loyalty and truth, but I trusted the softness I had seen in her eyes. A moment later, the 3 dots appeared. Then her reply came. "Yes, Grandma. I promise." I put the phone back in my pocket and breathed deeply. The path was becoming clearer. That evening, I returned to Martha's kitchen, We cooked together in silence, chopping onions, stirring pots, the ordinary motions of a life that felt safe for the first time in weeks. When we sat down to eat, she asked gently, "What will you do now?" I stared into the bowl of soup before me. They want me to give them everything. If I stay still, they will find ways to tear me apart. I need to move first. I need to step into the light before they drag me into the shadows. Martha nodded slowly. Then you should use the truth the way you once used your training. Calm, steady, no panic. You always said panic kills more than illness. Her words settled in me. Calm, steady, no panic. That had been my mantra during every long night shift. Now it would be my shield. The next day I returned to the clinic with Martha. I spoke with the director about something bigger than simple donations. I told him I wanted to give the money not as a gift, but as a pledge, tied to service, tied to hours of real work. His eyes widened, then softened. That would change everything, he said. I walked through the halls once more, pausing to watch a young nurse adjust an IV, to see a volunteer stack blankets, to hear a child laugh in the waiting room despite the cold. Every step confirmed what I already knew. My family's greed could consume me if I let it, but here my wealth could breathe life. That night I could not sleep. I sat by the window in Martha's guest room and wrote in my notebook. Plans, outlines, fragments of ideas. A gala. A pledge. A way to turn the number on the screen into something that no lawyer, no accusation, no greedy hand could erase. As the hours passed, the words filled the page. By dawn, I had drawn the shape of a decision. It was not perfect yet, but it was strong. It would require courage, but I had carried heavier weights before. I closed the notebook, placed the apron on top of it, and whispered to myself, "It is time to stop hiding." The lake shimmered in the first light of morning. The world outside was cold, but inside I felt the warmth of a fire that had been waiting too long to be lit. The circle of greed around me was tightening, but with every step toward the clinic, every secret promise to Olivia, every plan scribbled into that notebook, I felt the circle begin to crack. The warning came on a grey afternoon. I had just returned from the clinic when a sharp knock rattled my front door. When I opened it, Andrew and Linda were standing there. Andrew's face was pale, his jaw clenched. Linda carried a folder pressed against her chest like a weapon. "We need to talk," Andrew said. His tone was stiff, rehearsed. I let them in but stayed near the door. They walked straight to the dining table and spread out papers as if they already owned the room. Linda smoothed the top page with the flat of her hand. "Vivian, we have been patient, but your behavior has made us worry. You avoid calls, you refuse help, you run around with strangers. That is not the action of someone who is well." Andrew slid the page toward me. "It is a petition for guardianship. If you sign now, it will be easier. It means we can manage your finances properly, make sure nothing is wasted." I looked down at the paper. The words blurred, but I did not need to read them. I knew exactly what they meant. They wanted to declare me unfit. They wanted the court to hand them everything I had worked for. I lifted my eyes slowly. "You think I am not of sound mind?" Andrew avoided my gaze. "It is not an attack. It is protection. You are old, Mom. You do not see things clearly anymore. One wrong step and 33 million disappears. We cannot allow that." Linda leaned closer. "If you fight this, it will be public. Everyone will hear that you are unstable. Do you really want that?" For a moment, the room spun. I gripped the back of a chair until my knuckles whitened. Their words were heavy, sharp, cruel. But in that spinning, I felt something else ignite, a flame that steadied me, I straightened my back. I have poor eyesight for paperwork, but I have perfect vision for intentions, and I see yours very clearly. Linda's smile faltered. Andrew shifted in his chair. I gathered the papers and pushed them back toward them. If you believe in this so strongly, take it to a judge, but do not stand in my house and expect me to destroy myself with my own hand. Andrew's voice rose. Mom, stop being stubborn. This is the only way to keep everything safe. I raised my hand to silence him. Safe for whom? For you? For Linda? Not for me. The tension in the room pressed against my skin. Linda's eyes darted to Andrew, then back to me. She lowered her voice. We do not want this to turn ugly. Do the right thing. I took a step toward the door. The right thing is not on those pages. The right thing is leaving. I opened the door and waited. Slowly they gathered the papers, their movements stiff with frustration. Andrew's face burned red as he passed me. Linda's smile returned, but it was cold. At the threshold, she leaned close. You cannot win, Vivian. People already talk. All it takes is a few words, and your reputation is gone. I did not answer. I closed the door behind them and locked it. The silence that followed was heavy, but it did not crush me this time. It sharpened me. That night I sat at Martha's kitchen table and told her everything. She listened without interrupting, her eyes steady on mine. When I finished, she placed her hand over mine. They are trying to make you doubt yourself, she said. Do not let them. You are stronger than this. I nodded slowly. Then it is time to stop hiding. They want to drag me into the dark with whispers of insanity. I will pull everything into the light instead. I pulled out my notebook and began to write. Plans that had started as fragments now turned into sentences. Sentences turned into outlines. By midnight, I had the shape of something real, a public event, a pledge, a way to show everyone that I was not losing my mind, but choosing my path. Martha read over my shoulder. This is bold, she said quietly. It has to be, I replied. They think I am weak. They think silence means defeat. I will show them that silence was preparation. I leaned back in my chair and felt the weight in my chest ease. For the first time in weeks, I was not reacting. I was deciding. The papers they placed in front of me were supposed to break me. Instead, they gave me clarity. I closed my notebook, placed the apron on top, and whispered to myself, let them try. I will not be the one exposed. Saturday arrived cold and sharp, the kind of morning when the lake seemed to breathe fog into the city. I dressed in a simple black coat and tied my hair back, steadying myself in the mirror. Martha waited at the door with her scarf wrapped high, her eyes searching mine. Are you ready? She asked. I nodded. More ready than I have ever been. The clinic by the lake buzzed with energy. Volunteers had hung white banners across the walls, and rows of folding chairs lined the hall. People streamed in, neighbours, former patients, reporters holding cameras. The air hummed with curiosity, whispers rising and falling like the tide. I stepped inside, and for a moment silence fell. Faces turned toward me. Some smiled in recognition, others watched in confusion. I walked to the podium, my heart pounding at my steps steady. The old apron was folded in my bag. I could feel its weight against my side, reminding me of every night that brought me here. I began to speak. Most of you know me only as Vivian, a nurse who worked long hours in this city. Some of you may not know me at all. That is fine. What matters is that you know why we are here today. I let the words settle. I looked at the faces before me. I saw children fidgeting in their seats, Mothers holding babies, men with tired shoulders leaning forward. I saw reporters ready to write my story for the world. I continued. A number appeared on a screen recently, 33 million. To some people it was nothing more than a fortune to divide. To me it is something else. It is years of sacrifice, nights of work, mornings of silence. And now it will be more than that. It will be a promise. Murmurs moved through the crowd. Cameras clicked. I opened the notebook in front of me and read clearly. Today I pledge $29 million to the Lake Michigan Community Health Trust. These funds will be released not all at once, but in connection with service. Every dollar will be tied to hours of volunteering in clinics, shelters, and food programs across this city. For every hour given, funds will flow. For every act of service, care will multiply. A wave of sound rose, gasps and claps mixed together. I raised my hand for quiet. 3 million will fund scholarships for nursing and family medicine students. 1 million will support emergency meals for those who need them most. The rest I will keep, not as indulgence, but as a means to live simply, to remain free. I paused. The silence in the room was thick, waiting. Then I said, "If you want a piece of me, serve the people I served." The hall erupted. Applause rolled forward like thunder. Volunteers rose to their feet, clapping, some crying. Cameras flashed. For a moment I closed my eyes and let the sound wash over me. It was not about glory. It was about light. Then I opened my bag and pulled out the apron. I held it high, the frayed fabric catching the light. This is where it began. This apron carried the weight of every shift, every sacrifice. I place it here, not as a relic, but as a reminder. We do not build legacies by taking. We build them by giving. I placed it gently on the podium. From the back of the room, I saw movement. Andrew and Linda had arrived, Jacob close behind. Their faces were hard, their eyes darting as they realized the story was no longer theirs to control. A reporter turned toward them, snapping photos. Andrew stepped forward, his voice loud. "She is not well. Do not be fooled. This is proof of her instability, giving away everything. She needs protection." The crowd shifted, uneasy for a moment. I looked straight at him. "Protection? Where were you when I needed care? Where were you when the nights were long and the house was empty? Do not speak of protection now." Martha rose from her chair and called out, her voice firm. "She kept this clinic alive when no one else did. We stand with her." Others echoed her words. The crowd turned. Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras flashing toward Andrew and Linda, recording their flushed faces and stammered denials. I raised my hand again. This is not about fighting family. This is about making a choice. My choice. And I choose light. Applause filled the hall once more, drowning out the protests of those who wanted to twist my story. The sound rose higher, stronger, carrying the truth out of those walls and into the city beyond. When it was over, I stepped down from the podium. Olivia appeared at my side, her eyes wide, her voice trembling. "Grandma, that was powerful." I squeezed her hand. It was necessary. We walked out together into the cold air. The lake shimmered in the distance, restless but alive. Behind us, the clinic pulsed with energy, with voices, with hope. For the first time in weeks, I felt the weight in my chest lift. I had stood in the daylight, I had spoken the truth, and no paper, no threat, no whisper could take it back. The morning after the pledge, the city seemed to wake with a new rhythm. Headlines carried my name, some with praise, some with doubt, but all with the same fact. The money was tied to service, and nothing could change that. The clinic phones rang non-stop with people asking how to sign up. Volunteers filled the hallways, their names recorded on a growing list displayed on a board near the entrance. I stood quietly at the back of the room, watching as the board lit up with names. Students, retirees, single parents, people who had little but wanted to give something. For every hour pledged, the trust promised new resources. It was a living cycle, growing right before my eyes. But while strangers offered their time, my own family stayed silent. Andrew and Linda made no move to volunteer. Jacob gave no hours. Instead, they complained to anyone who would listen. They told neighbors that I was reckless, that I was letting my mind slip, that I was handing over a fortune to strangers. But the more they talked, the more foolish they sounded. Reporters pointed out that if they truly cared, they could join the pledge. All they had to do was show up and serve. They did not. One evening, I received a photo from a volunteer at the clinic. The board was lit with hundreds of names. At the bottom was a blank line where my family's names could have been. The caption under the photo read, "Your family's absence is louder than their words." The truth spread quickly. On social media, people praised the pledge and called out those who refused to take part. Some wrote that greed could not hide when service was the measure. Others said family had failed where strangers had succeeded. I read their words quietly, not out of spite, but with a deep ache that strangers understood what blood could not. A week later, I hosted a dinner at the clinic. It was not like the family gatherings filled with tension. This one was open to everyone: patients, volunteers, doctors, neighbors. We served soup and bread in the large hall. The tables were simple, the plates mismatched, but the air was warm with laughter. I sent an invitation to Andrew and Linda, to Jacob, to anyone in the family who wished to come. The seats were ready, bowls waiting, bread warm. They did not show. I took a photo of the long table filled with strangers who had become my community. Then I sent it to the family group message with a simple line: "Your seats were empty." No one replied. Instead, I received another letter from Jacob 2 days later. His words were sharp. "You are destroying the family's name. People are laughing at us. Stop this madness before you drag us all down." I folded the letter and placed it under the apron on my chair. His anger no longer shook me. It only showed how powerless they felt now that their demands no longer controlled me. Meanwhile, the city embraced the pledge. News outlets covered the rise in volunteers. Clinics reported more hands than ever before. Food lines moved faster. Shelters opened extra rooms. The hours of service multiplied, and with them the funds flowed. I walked through the clinic one evening and saw a teenager restocking shelves. He looked up and smiled. "I signed up because of you," he said. "I never thought I could matter, but now I do." Those words sank deeper than any praise. I realized then that the pledge was more than a shield against my family. It was a spark that lit other fires. But my family did not stop trying. Andrew left messages late at night. His voice shifted between pleading and threats. "Mom, please, just listen. You cannot cut us out. We are your blood. If you do not share, we will take you to court. Do you want your name dragged through that?" I did not answer. Silence was my only reply. The more they pressed, the clearer the truth became. They did not care about the pledge, or the hours served, or the lives improved. They cared only about what they could not grasp. One night as I left the clinic, the air was crisp, the lake dark and restless. I looked back at the glowing windows filled with voices, laughter, and the hum of service. I thought of the empty chairs at my family dinner, the silent phones, the threats folded into letters. And I felt no fear. They had chosen to vanish from what mattered. I had chosen to stay. The city knew the difference. The world could see it. For the first time in a long time, I walked home with my head high, the apron folded in my bag, and the knowledge that I had already won something greater than their approval. Winter began to break when the new wing of the clinic was ready. The walls were freshly painted, the equipment delivered, the halls smelling of new wood and hope. The sign above the entrance read, "Invisible Hands Ward." It was Martha's idea, a tribute to the countless unseen hours that built everything standing here. On the morning of the dedication, the room filled quickly. Nurses in crisp uniforms, doctors, volunteers, neighbors, children with bright scarves. Reporters lined the back, cameras ready. The podium stood at the front with a table beside it. On the table sat the apron folded neatly inside a glass case. Its frayed edges looked strange under the clean light, but to me it was the most honest artifact in the room. I stepped up as the applause faded. My hands trembled slightly as I gripped the podium, but my voice held steady. Years ago, I wore this apron through nights of exhaustion. It was not glamorous. It was stained with sweat and sorrow. But every stitch, every tie of its strings, carried the dignity of care. This ward stands as proof that those unseen hours were not wasted. The audience grew quiet. I could see heads bowed, some nodding slowly. I continued. From today forward, this ward will provide free care to those who cannot pay. It will train young nurses and doctors. It will remind all of us that service is not weakness, but strength. My pledge was not about money. It was about turning sacrifice into light. I lifted the case slightly so everyone could see the apron. This is where it began. Now it belongs to all of you. The room filled with applause. The sound rose high and echoed through the new halls. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the warmth of it sink deep. After the ceremony, we moved into the main hall. A banner hung above the stage with the name of my husband, David Carter. His memory had carried me through the darkest years, and today it lived again. I announced the creation of the David Carter Memorial Scholarship, dedicated to students entering nursing and family medicine. These scholarships are for those who will give their nights to others, as we once did, I said. They are for those who will not be thanked, who will not be seen, but who will keep lives breathing because they refused to quit. Tears blurred my vision as I looked at the young faces in the audience. They clapped, some crying openly. In that moment, I felt the years of loneliness fall away. From the corner of my eye, I saw movement. Andrew and Linda had arrived late, Jacob trailing behind. They stood at the edge of the room, stiff and uncomfortable. The cameras caught them, but the crowd barely noticed. Their presence was a shadow against the light filling the room. I walked toward them slowly, my steps even. "You can stay if you wish," I said softly, "but you will not speak over me here." Andrew's jaw tightened. Linda opened her mouth but shut it again when a reporter raised a camera in her direction. Jacob turned his eyes away. For the first time, they looked smaller, as if the crowd itself had shrunk them. I returned to the stage. For too long, I allowed silence to define me. I will not be silent anymore. This ward, this scholarship, this pledge are my voice. They will speak long after I am gone. The applause returned, louder than before, and I felt the ground steady under my feet. Later that evening, as the crowd dispersed, Olivia came to me. She held a small bouquet of wildflowers in her hands. "Grandma," she whispered, "I want to live with you. I do not want to be in that house anymore. I want to be where truth lives." I pulled her close, my arms trembling as I held her. "You have a home with me always," I said. "Not because of money, but because of love. She cried softly into my shoulder, and I knew she had chosen more than comfort. She had chosen light over shadows, truth over greed. When the hall emptied, I walked alone through the new ward. The walls gleamed under the light-jets, ready for the footsteps that would come, for the voices that would fill them. I paused before the glass case holding the apron. Its faded fabric seemed almost alive under the glow. I touched the glass gently and whispered, "We made it." The apron reflected back at me, not as a relic of struggle, but as a symbol of what it had all meant. The weight of years had transformed into something untouchable, beyond the reach of those who had tried to twist it. As I turned off the lights and stepped outside into the cold night, I felt no fear of what might come next. The ward stood as a shield, the scholarship as a bridge, and the pledge as a fire that would not go out. The storm my family had tried to build had broken against something stronger. They had lost their power, and in its place, I had found mine. The weeks after the dedication felt calmer than I had expected. The ward filled with patients, the scholarship applications began to arrive, and volunteers continued to sign up for hours of service. My days were full, but the weight that had once pressed against me was gone. One evening, Olivia and I sat on the balcony of the apartment overlooking the lake. The air was cool, the water restless under the fading sun. She rested her head on my shoulder and whispered, "I feel safe here." I kissed the top of her hair. That is all I ever wanted. A place where you could grow without fear. She was quiet for a long time before saying, "Do you think they will ever understand?" Her question lingered. I thought of Andrew's anger, Linda's sharp words, Jacob's threats. I thought of the way their faces had hardened when they realized the control they wanted had slipped away. And yet beneath the anger I knew there was fear. Fear of being left behind, fear of being powerless, fear of losing what they thought was theirs. "I hope so," I said finally. "People can change when they are ready. All we can do is leave the door open." The next morning I received a letter in the mail. The handwriting was Andrew's. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. "Mum, I know I have said things I should not have. I was angry. I was scared. I thought I was protecting the family, but I see now I was protecting myself. Linda feels the same. We did not handle this with respect. I do not know how to fix it, but I do not want to lose you completely." I read the words twice, then folded the paper and set it on the table. My first instinct was to push it away, but something in his tone was different. There was no demand, no calculation, only regret. That evening I called him. His voice was cautious. "Mum?" "Yes," I said softly. "I read your letter." Silence stretched before he spoke again. "I am sorry. I cannot change what I did, but I want to try to make it right. Will you let me?" I closed my eyes. Images of betrayal and anger flickered through me, but they were followed by memories of a small boy running into my arms after school, of a young man calling me for advice, of the son I had raised alone. "Trying is all I ask," I said. The line was quiet again, but I could hear the catch in his breath. "Thank you, Mum." When I hung up, I sat for a long time in the dim light. Forgiveness did not erase the pain, but it opened space for something new. It was not weakness. It was strength. Days later, Andrew came to the clinic. He did not make speeches or demand recognition. He put on a volunteer badge and stacked boxes in the storeroom. Linda arrived too, quieter than I had ever seen her. She helped serve food in the dining hall. They did not ask for money. They did not speak of inheritance. They only worked. Watching them, I felt something shift. Justice had been served not through punishment, but through truth. They had faced the mirror the pledge held up, and in that reflection they saw what greed had done to them. Now they were trying to build something else. I did not embrace them right away. Trust is slower than words, but I allowed them space. I allowed them to begin again. That was enough. On a quiet Sunday evening, Olivia and I walked past the clinic. The windows glowed warmly, voices drifting out into the cool air. I stopped and looked through the glass at the volunteers working inside, at Andrew stacking chairs, at Linda wiping tables. Olivia slipped her hand into mine. "You forgave them," she said softly. I nodded. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is choosing not to let the wound stay open. The lake shimmered under the moonlight. For the first time in years, I felt both peace and hope. I had chosen light, and now even those who once tried to take everything from me were learning to walk toward it. If you have followed this story to the end, take a moment to think about what forgiveness and justice mean to you. Sometimes justice is not about punishment, but about setting clear boundaries and choosing light over shadows. Have you ever faced a moment when family or friends betrayed your trust, and you had to decide between anger and forgiveness? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your words might encourage someone else who is struggling to find strength in their own journey. And if you enjoyed this story, remember to subscribe for more.